Hello, my name is Kenya, and today we're going to talk about how to create a pivot table and a chart or graph within your pivot table. So, if you watched session 1, we created a pivot table using the same data sheet that we have here. Our data set here has 15 columns and over 1,000 rows. And this data identifies the last name and first name of a student, whether or not the test was an online test or paper pencil test, a unique identifier, which is the STI, which is a unique code for the student, or student test identification number, the score on the assessment, which ranges from a 0 to a 600, one pass rate, we have a ones and zeros. One represents a 400 or higher, which is a passing score. A non-passing score is below a 400. Growth percentile is listed here. And then we have the student growth percentile level. It's either high, moderate, or low. For chart purposes, we have high, moderate, and low, and no growth listed here. And we have ones to identify if it's high underneath the high column, moderate, ones for moderate, and so forth. We also have in our chart group name, which is the same as teacher name. Just as I had stated in the previous video, when you're creating a pivot table, you want to make sure that only one cell is selected. If you select more than that, then your pivot table will only use the data that's in the selected area. So since I want all of the data that's on my spreadsheet to be a part of the pivot table, I simply click one of the buttons. I always go to the A1 cell and select that one. Move over to the Insert tab, and the first button here is Pivot Table. Select that. You get this Create Pivot Table window that pops up. That will tell you what you've selected, which is the spreadsheet, and it will tell you that you're going to be creating that pivot table in a new spreadsheet. Like I've stated before, you can create it within an existing spreadsheet, but if I were a beginner, I would only do the new spreadsheet. When you click OK, now you have an area for your pivot table. What I suggest you do is to create your pivot table first before you create your chart. The pivot table that I'm going to be utilizing here is going to deal with the moderate, high, and low student percentile. And I want that by teacher, by subject, or by test. And so what I want to be in my report filter is going to be the test that we're going to be looking at. So again, when you click the arrow here, it gives you a list of all the assessments that we have. And I want these assessments to be divided out by teacher. And now I want to take a look at each teacher's growth, whether or not it was high, moderate, or low. So high, moderate, and low. Clicking on each one of those to change the count of high to the sum of high. The reason why I decided to do the count of high and instead the sum of high instead of the count of high is because the count is going to give you the total number of cells underneath the high, which is going to be the total number of students. But the count, because I changed everything that had a high to a 1, that's going to give me the sum. So again, make sure that you fully understand the data that you have in your data set before you begin creating a pivot table. Understand what all of those numbers mean before you begin creating a pivot table. Now I have all of the teachers here and the total number of high students, moderate students, and low student growth percentiles here. I want to create a chart, not a chart but a graph. So I go over just like I would in a regular Excel spreadsheet and click Pivot Chart. To begin with, I'm going to do my traditional column chart. Click OK. So this has all the teachers listed here, and it has their high, moderate, and low sums. So let's say I don't want it to say sum of high. I want it to say something different. So let's change that and have it be listed as high growth, moderate growth, and low growth. And you can see how it changed it over here automatically. Now, because this is within a pivot table, I can change this graph any way I want to, without having to really change this chart over here like I would with a traditional Excel spreadsheet. So I can click here for group name, and I can say I only want to see teacher 1. So this is only teacher 1. Did not have to change the chart over here because the chart automatically changes here because I changed the graph. They're both interconnected together. So I can go back to all, and now I have all of them. I can now take a look at this by grade, so I can have, or by a test, and so I can only have the Algebra 1. And so I can print out this chart, this graph here, and the chart associated with it. Or clicking the green tab that has been highlighted up here, Pivot Chart Tools, and I can change the graph just like I would with an Excel spreadsheet. There's very little difference between the Excel spreadsheet, traditional Excel spreadsheet, and the pivot table Excel charts or graphs. Only main difference is that you have more flexibility in terms of changing the look and view of them, and also the source data. So now we're going to change this from a bar graph to a pie chart. So just like I would with a traditional Excel spreadsheet, I would go over to changing the graph, which I go to change chart type, and I'm going to click pie. So I'm select this one. Click OK. Notice this is just giving me high growth. It's not really what I'm looking for in terms of a graph. And part of the reason is because of how the data is arranged. Whenever your graph here is not exactly what you're looking for, always take a look at your data and see if by switching the columns and rows, you might get something a little bit more desirable. Again, this right here is teacher 1, and let's see if now we have high, moderate, and low. Do I want percentages? And when I take and so now we have 52%, and it tells me that that's 27 students. I have my 15%, which is 8 students, and my 33%, which is 17 students. And I can change the color so it looks like this, a little bit more defined here. And I can change my grouping, so as you have all of those selected. And I have the test here. I can change that to this test here. And I can change the teacher, so I can go and look at different teachers. And again, I can put in the names here. And again, just like I was doing before with, like you would do before with the traditional Excel spreadsheet. But again, you have more versatility when you're using it within the pivot table. And again, it's not that you're creating multiple graphs using multiple charts. It's one chart, and you're creating a multitude of additional charts with this one, and a multitude of graphs with one chart. This is how you create a graph with using a pivot table. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Have a great day.